Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2022. That brings us to that title, which has been released by Criterion, designated at spy number 1124. This is a work which is described as being from 1982, and the name of the filmmaker is Wayne Wang, and the name of the work is Chan is Missing. Wonderful work from the year 1982, and it is from that great filmmaker artist Wayne Wang. And among its great cast, we have people like Wood Moy and Mark Hayashi and Lorraine Chu and others. This is the work which is the great film, which is Chan is Missing. And so many things to say about this great work, Chan is Missing. So many ways to absorb it, to experience it, to interpret it. It has many different levels, I think, operating at once. One of such levels in operation, of course, being the plot or story structure. Now, when we talk about the story of Chan is Missing, and we focus in on what might be described, or what we as viewers might regard as being our main protagonist or protagonists, those being Joe and Steve. These are the Wood Moy and Mark Hayashi characters, respectively. And the setting is Chinatown, San Francisco Chinatown. And we also understand that they're trying to find this person, Chan, due to issues involving money, cash, cab license, taxi cab license, etc. So the main thrust of the plot is these characters, these protagonists, and focusing in on Joe and Steve character, Wood Moy and Mark Hayashi characters. They are trying to essentially traverse the landscape that is Chinatown to find out what happened to this person who is Chan, the elusive, enigmatic, mysterious figure who is Chan, thus the title being Chan is Missing. So this is I think the very direct nature of the plot structure. Already in this wonderfully designed plot, we have so many possibilities occurring simultaneously. So perhaps on one level, and this might be related to the way that the plot is developing, we have this detective story-like structure, this quest, this journey, type of mystery that is layered upon mystery, layered upon mystery. It has often been described as a type of say, homage, or maybe hearkening back to, or perhaps its own representation or example of what might be called the film noir genre. And I think that is one way of looking at it. I think another way, or maybe parallel way, or related way of looking at it is as a type of detective mystery. And it also has this way in which it provides, say, clues or insights, or that aspect of the cinematic genre expression through the use of voiceover narrative or narration, and also the use of various, say, pinpoint details that might be described as being clues or hints or puzzle pieces to some kind of overarching mystery. Again, it is in the title, Chan is Missing. Where is Chan? What is the logistics, or what is the journey, or what is the quest? What is involved in trying to find Chan? who is Chan? What is this all about? That type of mystery is going on. So in that way, in that type of direct way, it could be described as a detective mystery type of situation or story. And indeed it is. And we have our characters as detectives, as trying to figure out the mystery. And they go from place to place, situation to situation, person to person, engaged with a type of discussion, interview, inquiry, but also getting to know the milieu, getting to know the backdrop, getting to know the look and feel and atmosphere of the places, things, and people that are this wonderful, special place that is Chinatown. San Francisco's Chinatown. So herein lies the plot. Now, what we also have at the same time or in parallel, and this is something that I've tried to hint at in what I've just said now, which is the way in which, through this act of adventure or quest or detective mystery, we have the means by which this film, via the protagonists, travel or traverse this very fascinating and very rich and enriching and human and very, very much a lived-in place that is this real place. That is Chinatown. Now, this is a very important aspect of this film, and it's discussed in some of the later supplemental materials, and we'll get to that momentarily. Another way to describe it is Chinatown itself is like its own character of the film, and I think that's very, very apropos. It is vivid, it is bright. We have so many people that are part of this area. We have so many different types of character and persons and interesting places that that Joe and Steve travel to and explore and examine and inquire after, etc. So this also becomes a type of journey through this wonderful, wonderful place, this wonderful place in time and space. Now, in this discussion or in this exploration, what we also have, also in parallel to this, it's not just an exploration or a discussion or a type of a revelation of these wonderful corners of this very special part of the world. It is also a means by which we discover the various details and aspects that one might say make up this very complex world, this very complex place that is also itself made up of various different levels and layers. Sometimes those levels and layers and components might be said to be complementary to each other. Other times, and it's revealed directly in the plot and also in the atmosphere of the film Chan is missing, other times those components might be said to be perhaps in contradiction with each other, or perhaps colliding or clashing with each other in a way that might yield more, say, revelations and feelings and explorations and ideas about not just the people and place and context of this wonderful dynamic that is Chinatown, but also on a universal level as a type of exploration into human expression and emotion and indeed the human condition. So to expound upon that just for a moment here, what I mean by this idea of complementary components or colliding components. We have here, and this is also acknowledged by Wayne Wang and others in the supplementary materials, which is the acknowledgement that, one of the philosophies behind Chan is Missing the film is the exploration. And part of that exploration is identifying and recognizing and acknowledging also the point or the counterpoint that there might be different layers of, say, the backdrop of the cultural experience that is expressed in the day-to-day lives and living of the Chinatown area. And this is acknowledged, for instance, in different dialects of the Chinese language. You know, the Chinese language is a very rich and vast and has a very itself quite a profound history. And part of that profound history is the difference of various dialects of the Chinese language. And indeed, we have this difference in this component expressed in terms of, say, Mandarin Chinese or Cantonese Chinese, etc. So this is one area where we see a complement or a difference depending on one's perspective and interpretation, also the context of the film and plot dynamics as it progresses forward. Another aspect, of course, is the way in which the film portrays, say, the population of Chinatown that is closely associated with mainland China, and the population of Chinatown that is closely associated with Taiwan. And also, by extension, the population of Chinatown that is associated with other parts of the world, for instance, Hong Kong, for example, Manila, etc., for example, other parts, etc. So, what we have in that dynamic is, of course, the possibility of exploring different avenues of this various mix of cultures that makes up the day-to-day living experience in this wonderful place of Chinatown. But part of that too, and it's revealed directly in the plot, is how this sometimes leads to clashes. And one of the clashes that is, I think, one of the primary examples of this in the film is the what's referred to as the flag waving incident. And the flag waving incident is revealed early on. It is revealed in this idea of the reportage style, newspaper clippings and articles, etc. Also further explored via the voiceover narration. But this is hinting at, or perhaps not just hinting at, but directly linking to the notion of the population that is associated with mainland versus the population that is associated with Taiwan, and the notion, therefore, of a type of clash or tension that is culturally based, that is also politically based, that is also very much part of the fabric and life of Chinatown, all the way down to the way that heritage is celebrated, and how this celebration of heritage might lead to a further celebration of legacy and culture, or it might reveal certain, say, political or socio-politically based tensions and very uneasy tensions that are reflective of, say, the political climate of the contemporary times. And I mean the contemporary times, not just contemporary to, say, the making of the film or the release of the film, 1982, but I mean also relevant to the times that perhaps we are now watching this film thanks to the 2022 release of the Criterion Collection right here and now. So that means that this film and what it's exploring in the context of the story, in the context of Chinatown, also has a socio-political relevance that resonates very, very strongly and is indeed a very embedded and profoundly important component of the plot Chan is missing. So it becomes a circular thing of the idea of the direct nature of the plot and the film noir detective dynamics that also leads to the exploration of the cultural heritage of the environment of and place and wonderful dynamics that is San Francisco Chinatown, that also leads to the further exploration, consideration, discussion, and indeed recognition of the various, say, issues and tensions that might be of a socio-political element, and then leading back to that socio-political element embedded into the plot itself. So it has this wonderful circular fashion that also, at the same time, while all of this is going on, is a brilliant, brilliant example of the, say, drive and almost the entrepreneurial, individual, artistic endeavor and spirit that could be said to be this great sense of independent cinema that this film, Chan is Missing, is undoubtedly one of the key prime examples of. Now, Wayne Wang, as a filmmaker, there will be more details about him and his biography and the background and making of this particular film, Chan is Missing, when one explores the supplement. So it is overall a brilliant, brilliant package, this Criterion Collection release being. But one of the things that's also very important about Chan is Missing is the look and feel and the very existence of the film. It has this wonderful, grainy, black and white look that acknowledges, I think, in a profoundly proud and brilliantly proud way about its almost homemade feel. I mean, this was made with a lot of heart and soul and a lot of effort and a lot of say, limited resources, and not a lot, but with a certain degree of limited resources as well. And with that situation, it developed into this phenomenal thing. It developed into this culturally phenomenal thing, as well as a cinematic experience that is absolutely exceptional. and it has this lasting legacy that lasts right now to this very day. And so that is a testament, of course, to the independent filmmaking spirit that is behind this film Chen is Missing, led, of course, by director Wayne Wang. Also, we see his sensibilities and his philosophies that are displayed here, as well as those of the cast and crew that are coming together to create this. We have wonderful dynamics. It has a funny, humorous element. There are moments when the dialogue suddenly turns very sharp and very dramatic and very tense, and sometimes even hinting at something of the melancholy, while also playing homage to these film noir types of genre dynamics that we can recognize or that we can feel echoes of from past, say, film or cinema heritage techniques. We also have this idea, too, of how it's dealing with the notion of representation, race representation in cinema, how it is doing so in a way, in a direct way, having this idea, and also it's reflected in a lot of the dialogue with, say, Joe and Steve and others, etc. The Asian American experience and the way in which these types of, say, racially based dynamics are played out in the day-to-day dialogue settings and scenes of the characters that we see expressed in Chen is Missing on the one hand, also as a type of, say, maybe somewhat cinematically reflexive or self-reflexive way, in an ironic and perhaps even an acerbic critical way that is also always very earnest and very honestly put. We also have ways in which this film seems to be combating against certain, say, stereotypes of racial representation that might have existed, say, in past cinema and musical heritage, that is also being discussed and explored and treated in this film Chen is Missing. So we have maybe quotations of past, say, music, past, say, lines of dialogue, past, say, songs that may also have their hints or echoes of a type of, say, depiction on a stereotypical level of racial representations that this film Chen is Missing is also combating in a way that is also very fresh, very invigorating, and very much tongue-in-cheek, very much filled with humor and a lot of heart. This film, Chen is Missing, is one that has so much heart, so much soul, so much invigorating touches to it, and also remains this wonderful exploration of a type of identity and journey and time and place. And let me end here with this idea of the journey. One of the things about this film is the elliptical and almost enigmatic nature of the quest and journey itself. I don't want to get too detailed here for those who haven't seen the film, but that is one of the special aspects of this. The mystery, the unknown, the quest for something that is unknown. This is indeed very much part of the plot dynamics of the film, thus the title, Chen is Missing. So one searches for that or that person who happens to be missing. So this is the overarching plot dynamic and also the overarching metaphor. There is this idea of searching for something that is not there presently. This idea maybe that could be a character, it could be a notion of oneself, one's identity, an idea of the further need of exploration. Maybe something is currently not existing in one's life now, or in one's, say, social or political landscape now, that one yearns for, or one seeks beyond oneself, beyond one's specific time and place. That is the quest, that is the journey, and it can be applied, as I say, in metaphorical terms, or maybe in very direct terms, in the context of, say, one's search for place in the context of one's, say, social, political, and cultural identity. It could be vis-a-vis, say, the maybe something to do with explorations of one's home, and that could be from a cultural vantage point, that could be from a geographical vantage point, or it could be a combination of those plus other elements. And or it could be in the context of, say, the journey of the plot dynamic from point A to point B to point C to point D. And this is a reflection not just of the plot Chen is Missing, but also this is a reflection of the type of journey that one can say is something that is always everlasting and ongoing for each of us. Thus, this film, Chan is Missing, and the search and the quest and the enigma of that is embedded in this film, and it is also a reflection of that type of human journey that I think we all can say we can relate to. What a powerful film this is. This is the work from Wayne Wang, which is Chan is Missing. The Criterion Collection has released this film, Chan is Missing, at SPY number 1124 on this wonderful Blu-ray edition. Now, I have already taken the liberty prior to starting this video recording of removing the insert from the inside of the case here, and it's one of the fold-out types, and I'll get to that momentarily, including the essay. But before I go anywhere else, let me talk about the transfer, because according to the fold-out insert, it says, Chan is Missing is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.33 to 1. This digital transfer was approved by director Wayne Wang. So it's described as being a high-definition digital transfer with uncompressed monaural soundtrack. It has a wonderful look and feel and aesthetic to it. This film, Chan is Missing, and so I think it's reflected very nicely in this presentation. So if you haven't seen the film, Chan is Missing, I think this is a really wonderful place to go. And so I just wanted to express that. I mean, it is a film that has this, as I mentioned earlier, a type of handmade, grainy, black and white cinematography look to it, which is part of the aesthetic, which is part of the strength of the film. And so I think that's reflected very nicely when one is watching this film in the context or in the form of, say, a release like this by the Criterion Collection. So again, if you haven't seen the film, I think this is a really good place to go. It's a really great Blu-ray. Now, another of the reasons why this Blu-ray is, I think, really great is due to the inclusion of other supplemental materials, which can be, which is part of the Criterion Collection, say, experience, as well as the experience of other labels, of course. But Criterion Collection is, of course, part of that. Now, for purposes of Chan is Missing, we have a number of supplements that I'd like to speak about right now. The first is a discussion described as being from the year 2022 between Hua Su and Wayne Wang. This is approximately 33 minutes, and here we have a lovely discussion. It's like an interview or discussion or conversation between these two, focusing in on Wayne Wang and various aspects of, say, his life, his biography, and his career, and also his approach and perspective to the work Chan is Missing. So in the context of that lovely conversation and discussion, we have, for example, the some description or some points about Wayne Wang's own childhood, moving from Hong Kong to the United States at the specific time that he describes, also the experience that he had moving to the United States during that time, he describes it again, the 60s. And so he at first moved to this area that was, as they describe it, a Quaker ranch. And he says, too, that from his lifestyle prior to his move, when he was living in Hong Kong, in this very sort of urban environment, and to moving to this very almost this ranch atmosphere and this ranch environment, very bucolic, was also a type of a different shift in terms of his own perspective. That's how he describes it. And then also this coincided as he grew up into the late 1960s, and this coincided with what they describe here in this conversation in terms of American culture and American counterculture. And so this also is part of his own, say, makeup and his own view of himself and also the world around him, as well as what he describes, Wayne Wang does, what he describes as his own upbringing and roots and family and his relationships with his parents, in particular his father, vis-a-vis Hong Kong, and also vis-a-vis China and Hong Kong and the United States. And so this, I think, forms a really interesting a collection of various, say, points, an amalgam, if you will, of various points, cultural points as well as individual points that I think Wayne Wang uses to describe something of his own background and his own sense of identity, which is also very, very important when one leads into a conversation of Chan is missing. So this is really wonderful. Speaking of his own upbringing and education, and his college education and his relationship with his father, he does mention too about how the initial plan was to study uh, to study medicine and to be a doctor, but then partway through his college studies, he took a class. He describes it as in art history, and he fell in love with that, and he fell in love with the arts, and also this coincided with his interaction with film and cinema studies, and so this caused some tension, according to Wayne Wang, between himself and his father, who had hopes for his son to become a doctor, but Wayne Wang, found his interest lied in art, and his interests were in art and painting, and then later, of course, in cinema. And so, in that vein of the conversation, he then talks to Hatsu here about how they talk about his film or his collaboration, A Man, a Woman, and a Killer, and this notion about, he makes a very interesting point now about how he saw the film recently, and he himself admits that there are some aspects of it that he found somewhat maybe perplexing in a manner of speaking. But at the same time, there is this notion of a type of journey or a type of puzzle or an enigma or mystery that I think can also be said to be very much, or they acknowledge here to be very much part of the the DNA makeup that is a film like Chan is Missing in a very profound way. And I think when one considers Chan is Missing and the enigma mystery nature of it, and that is very apropos. And then they turn the conversation then to this idea of Chinatown and the idea of how Wayne Wang, through his own personal experience with Chinatown and living there and working there, and also through his own, say, friends and associations, he began to appreciate and develop this sense of, of Asian culture and Asian American culture, and this sense or concept or this notion or recognition or understanding of this type of cultural identity aspect became one of the bases for the inspiration or genesis for the work Chan is Missing. So this is also a very important, say, root or sense of details in terms of the background leading up to the creation of this extraordinary work of art. And so this idea too of Chinese American representations in cinema comes up, and also for Wayne Wang, he had his cinema heroes, of course, but also from his own personal experience, he also found a lot of, in his words, and I'm paraphrasing, a lot of heroism in what he describes as "quote unquote" the ordinary people of daily life in a place like Chinatown. So I think this is very much consistent with what one might call the overall underlying philosophy of a work like Chan is Missing in a profound and deep and wonderful way. And also they talk about the shooting process, about how a lot of people had day jobs during the weekdays, and so the only time where everyone could come together and shoot the film was on weekends. So this was a film that was essentially shot on the weekends, on people's days off, in a manner of speaking, which is also quite incredible, and also highlights the type of independent cinema streak that is also at the heart of this extraordinary work Chan is Missing. And there's also the idea too of Chan is Missing, the quest for Chan, trying to find Chan, and how that is a type of parallel metaphor for the quest to find a sense of cultural identity, the quest to find something of a cultural identity in the context of Chinatown, San Francisco Chinatown. And then this means too, we meet various people along the way. One of the characters that we meet, Henry the cook. This is played by Peter Wang, and so one of the details that is discussed lovingly in this conversation is about the idea of drinking milk. And in this little detail that Huasu claims that he really adores this idea of Henry drinking milk. And then Wayne Wang in that takes the opportunity to reveal a little bit of a secret behind that, and behind the reason why Henry is drinking the milk the way it is. I don't want to spoil it here, but what I do want to say that this leads into a lovely discussion between the two of them here about the way in which language is portrayed in this film. Now, this leads to this idea about how sometimes, and actually quite often, we will get moments of spoken Chinese language, Mandarin or Cantonese, whatever the case may be, depending on the various scenarios that we encounter in this film, this is also something that is reflected by Wayne Wang here. Something he wanted to capture is the myriad dialects, the way in which there are many different parts that make up this whole that is Chinatown. And oftentimes, as we mentioned before, sometimes those parts are complementary, or other times they might be deemed to be disparate, depending on the context, depending on the circumstances. Well, one of the aspects of that exploration of say, identity, culture, and representation is language. And Wayne Wang here acknowledges the importance of language and the way he wanted to preserve the importance of language in a manner of speaking by purposefully not providing subtitles for all of the Chinese spoken parts of the film. In other words, there are parts that sometimes have accompanying, say, subtitles, and indeed for the Criterion release, there are optional subtitles for those who are interested. But Wayne Wang also says that there was a purposeful move to withhold English language subtitles for a lot of the Chinese language spoken parts. And in that, he reveals, Wayne Wang does, one part about how in the Chinese spoken component of the sequence involving Henry the cook and the drinking of the milk, there's a little bit of a secret revealed as to perhaps what the reason why he's drinking the milk the way he does. And so that is a lovely, lovely detail, and it also again goes towards what Wayne Wang, describes as being his attempt to try to maybe preserve a sense of, say, to have people who are watching the film and who are maybe not Chinese language speakers, but at the same time to have them listen, to have his audience and the viewers of the film listen to the rhythms and the speech patterns and the cadence and the wonderful way in which almost the mellifluous musical way in which language is spoken, and to have that be the focus of moments like that, not necessarily intently trying to get at the meaning of the words being spoken per se, but appreciating and enjoying the sounds and the experience and that type of engagement. Now, I think that is a very profound type of thing, because what it does is it preserves a sense of the quote-unquote authentic, while at the same time giving a sense of a type of distance. And that distance is also acknowledged between the two of them here in this conversation, which is also very much consistent with the concept or notion of the quest or journey, or the seeking to find something that is not part of one's direct current situation. So finding something that is currently not there. That is the whole metaphor of a film Chen is missing. And I think that being reflected in a detail like the way in which language is presented by Wayne Wang on purpose is utterly fascinating and brilliant. So that's one area where this, one of many areas where this conversation really, really shines. And this idea too of other films in Wayne Wang's own filmography are discussed, and discussing too, which is also discussed later as well, the way in which Wayne Wang wants to express himself, and sometimes he might feel this burst of creativity in a way that will try to differentiate between a work that he made previously, and thus that has a lot to that shows so, I think, prominently in the types of projects that he has chosen over the course of his really grand and various filmography. It's a brilliant filmography. And then also they speak here about the reaction to the film, how they tried, or Wayne Wang and company first tried to get it, spread the word. There were some hopeful attempts that maybe didn't materialize along the way, but ultimately, it led to certain circumstances, led to the film receiving a glowing and wonderful, praiseworthy reaction from Vincent Canby, and that led to the wonderful spreading word of mouth praise for this film, thus leading to the phenomenal existence, or the phenomenal reaction. This film became a phenom in a lot of ways. So this is really quite wonderful. And also, they do speak too about how this film fits into the filmography of Wayne Wang in terms of other works like Eat a Bowl of Tea or Dim Sum or Life is Cheap. And also he speaks too about how, among other things in this great work, Wayne Wang tries to explore concepts of racial representation, and also tries to handle or deal with aspects of stereotypes. And I think that is also a very profound, one of the very profound aspects of this very overall profound work Chan is missing, which is why this conversation between Wayne Wang and Hua Su is so great. So please check it out if you can. It's really wonderful. It's approximately 33 minutes. And that's not all, because then we have another interview or discussion, excuse me, this time also from 2022, 24 minutes. This time this is a conversation between Wayne Wang and Ang Lee. And this is great too, because we have two filmmakers who could said to be more or less contemporary filmmakers with each other. But that's also an interesting thing too, because here Ang Lee talks about how he first discovered Wayne Wang's work, Ang Lee during his own, say, film studies career. And this idea too about how it was, there were certain maybe there are certain acknowledged differences in terms of their own backgrounds that they acknowledge in this conversation, that's for sure. But also there are a lot of great connections that they make, including the connection over cinema. So here is a great example or discussion of where, again, the conversation turns in terms of Wayne Wang's own, say, film studies career, finishing film school, going back to Hong Kong. But Wayne Wang also describes about how, from his vantage point, he didn't quite fit in to the Hong Kong film industry standards or culture, to the point where he describes how he got fired because maybe he was a bit too out of the box when compared to, say, the various standards of the Hong Kong film and entertainment industry that he encountered while he was working there. So and this is also coinciding with, or perhaps just prior to, what is described as the Hong Kong new wave of cinema. And so he went back, Wayne Wang did, he went back to the United States. He said he taught English for a little bit in Chinatown. And so this, again, became part of the way in which he really got to know Chinatown culture and Asian American representations and aspects of that culture, which led to Chan is Missing. And also there's a really interesting discussion here about how Chan is Missing was funded and how the profits were shared. It's a very interesting anecdote, and it shows, again, the great rapport between these two gentlemen. And also this idea too of links to a type of quote-unquote tradition, whether that tradition may have its roots in, say, mainland China or Taiwan or Hong Kong, as the case may be, and indeed, as we've discussed earlier, how these links to tradition or roots also has ramifications or have ramifications in the present day, or in the context of Chinatown and the plot and the socio-political dynamics of such plot, as we've discussed the flag waving incident, etc. So this is really quite profound as well. Also, the way in which Wayne Wang's filmography could be said to be, in general, focusing in on quote-unquote outsider characters who are maybe described as being on the periphery of a sort of quote-unquote mainstream. And I think that's also very, very apropos when one is considering Chan is Missing, I think, from a maybe specific plot context, but also on a maybe a general context as well. But that is also part of the beauty and charm of the focus and intent and earnestness of the work Chan is Missing by Wayne Wang. And also, this is also a great reflection back to Ang Lee's own works and his own, say, sensibilities in works like, say, Sense and Sensibility or Brokeback Mountain, etc. There's also a way in which they return to Chan is Missing and talk about there's a type of cynicism, as well as type of cynicism and a recognition of, say racist stereotypes or racism and the like. But also there is a way in which this film Chan is Missing is so funny, so humorous, so filled with comedic life. That makes it so wonderful. And also they talk about shots of water. They talk about how these water shots, the shots of the ripples of the water surface, these are so profound, and how they have such an important, profound significance in terms of the quest or journey for a recognition or identification or discovery of some kind of cultural, say, roots or cultural heritage in the context of discovery of that aspect of their background and their connections to China. Chinese identity, and maybe in how they describe it, Ang Lee and Wayne Wang, as a type of elusive nature to that type of journey or discovery process, which I think also is very profound and very, very profound indeed. Also, this discussion of Ozu, Yasujiro Ozu, and the way in which they perceive Ozu cinema, that among many things focuses on quote unquote empty spaces, but that the empty spaces does not signify a sense of emptiness or nihilism per se, but rather it's a type of reminder of what was there before, and how, say, inanimate objects or rooms somehow have the power ability to be infused with a sense of the human. And that doesn't always mean necessarily, say, personification per se, but this idea of memory and a transcendental aspect of space and time, even where people are not necessarily present in the room. And I think that's also very profound as well when one thinks about Chan is Missing and the overall metaphor of the film being a hunt for something that is not there. The elusive nature, the enigmatic nature of the quest or journey or the mystery or the mission of trying to find something that is not there. Now, that doesn't mean automatically or necessarily something that is nihilistic, but it is something that is a quest for some kind of meaning out of something that might otherwise perceive to be, say, empty. And therefore, that word empty, in the concept of empty space, I think, is thus infused automatically with so much meaning and purpose and drive and spirit. That is the very heart and soul of Chan is Missing. So this discussion, especially this point between the two of them here on this and other aspects, is so fascinating. So this discussion between Ang Lee and Wayne Wang, please check it out if you can. It's wonderful. It is approximately 24 minutes. But that's not all, because then the supplements continue with a discussion between Dennis Lim and Wayne Wang. This is described as being from 2021 for the Criterion channel. This totals approximately 17 minutes. And here we have this wonderful discussion focusing on Wayne Wang and his own biography, and maybe his own influences in terms of, say, a cinematic approach in philosophy. For example, documentary styles are mentioned. The French New Wave, Nouvelle Vague, is mentioned. Also, then this turns into a discussion about Chinatown and the shooting of the film like Chan is Missing, as well as other discussions of other films by Wayne Wang, which is another great part of this, and the other supplements, by the way. A discussion about Chan is Missing, but also the discussion of Wayne Wang as a filmmaker, and also how Chan is Missing fits into the overall context of his filmography, and also discussion of the themes and concerns of his filmography writ large, including going back to how Chan is Missing fits into that. So this discussion with Dennis Lim is again, part of that overall arching dynamic, which is wonderful. They also mentioned too here, or speaking of that, other films like Dim Sum are mentioned in this context. So a wonderful discussion here. Joy Luck Club, etc. is mentioned here. Made in Manhattan, etc. So Eat a Bowl of Tea. In that context, I should point out there's a lovely dynamic that is mentioned here about, say, antecedents, or another way to put it, influences, or how one might classify various films within the context of the filmography of Wayne Wang. And so they discuss Chan is Missing, Dim Sum, and Eat a Bowl of Tea. And the idea is Chan is Missing is like Wayne Wang in Jean-Luc Godard mode. Dim Sum is Wayne Wang in Yasujiro Ozu mode. And Eat a Bowl of Tea is, in his words, his Hollywood musical type of film in that way. And I thought that was a very fascinating way of classifying or describing these experiences, including Chan is Missing. You know, there is this idea also of an approach or an aesthetic that could be very much, say, thematically or spiritually connected with what might be said to be part of the French New Wave or the Nouvelle Vague, including, or by example, the films of Jean-Luc Godard in the 1960s. So it's a very, I think, apropos connection. It's wonderful that it's being made here, among other things as well. So, this is, I think, a lovely primer to the works of Wayne Wang, as well as, again, how Chan is Missing fits into that. And also, there's a lovely anecdote about Wayne Wang and his filmography, and how he is like a bird that continues to fly and not landing anywhere. But in many ways, that is a lovely symbol of the way in which Wayne Wang seems to want to explore different avenues and approaches in a filmography that seems very various in terms of the styles and the subject matter, but there's always at the same time a type of through line of thematic concern and questioning and engagement and exploration that is again part of the perspective and philosophy of Wayne Wang, but at the same time respecting the sense of variety, which I think is such a lovely phrase, and the way in which Dennis Lim closes out the conversation with Wayne Wang is so brilliant. Yes. So check out this conversation if you haven't done so already. It's great. Approximately 17 minutes. And that's not all, because then we have it's described as the 2005 documentary, which is called Is Chan Still Missing? This is by Debbie Lum, and it's approximately 28 minutes overall. And this is great too. This is really great because this is talking about or revisiting and celebrating the legacy, the long-lasting legacy of Chan is Missing, including also revisiting that legacy from the vantage point and talking with some of the key players, the actors of the film, included in which are Lorraine Chu and Wood Moy and Mark Hayashi, as well as Curtis Choi and Stephen Gong and others. And so we have the way in which this film is very significant in terms of the context of exploration of Chinese American representations and also cultural heritage, and also in particular the actors here, Wood Moy and Mark Hayashi, for example, talk about the theater background and how they were a part of the local theater community and the acting community, and how in that way they have their own acting, say, culture, which is in many ways it's an interesting cross section between that theater and acting culture on the one hand and what Wayne Wang brought with him when they collaborated to create what ultimately became Chan is Missing. So this is also very fascinating as well. Also, this notion too of improvisation and the acting method is touched upon here as well. And some scenes, really intense key scenes of the film Chan is Missing, it's revealed how some of these scenes came about because of certain aspects of improvisation, and how that type of improvisation on the part of one actor helped to inspire the other actor or actors that were in the same scene, or things of that nature, which is fascinating. Again, it's part of the craft. It reminds us of just how much attention to detail and the craft that is involved in all aspects, including the filmmaking, including the acting, that make up this grand, brilliant whole. And there's this idea too of the spontaneity of that type of creative process. There's also this notion too of the themes, and also this way in which the film, while celebrating culture, also focuses in on the diversity of a particular culture of the Chinatown community. And this is also touched upon by Wayne Wang and others in some of the previous supplements. But and the idea too of a type of diversity, maybe from some circles or some perspectives, it might be said to be a type of, say, diaspora or displacement or separation or home away from home type of aspect, or part of that aspect, which can be said to be making up part of the whole, again, from certain vantage points or certain perspectives. Again, that's another reflection of the whole diversity of the range of, say, the community tapestry and tableau. And so then there are some great aspects and scenes focused on. There's a scene by the water, the pier, that is a very iconic and important scene here, and that's talked about in detail from the perspective of the actors. So again, for these and other reasons, this documentary, Is Chan Still Missing, is totally worth it. Please check it out if you can. It's really brilliant. And then the supplements then are rounded out with the inclusion of a trailer. It's a really great trailer, so please check that out if you can. So all in all, we have a wonderful set of supplements that are accompanying and part of this overall release from Criterion, which is for the film Chan is Missing. So now let us turn our attention to the insert and also the presentation and the cover art. I should point out this lovely, very clever cover art design, and it's really very clever. Let's say the art directors are Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, and designer, our dear friend Sister Hyde. Drusilla, Sister Hyde here, who has been so gracious to be a guest in terms of an interview discussion on this channel some time back. And here, Sister Hyde's artwork here for Chan is Missing, and the design here, one of the best. Great job here. And that artwork motif is carried over to the back as well as over into the insert. And I've, again, removed the insert here for purposes of this video discussion. It is a fold-out insert, and so, again, I'm not a fan of the fold-out per se in terms of that method. I much prefer the staple booklet because of the robustness and the ability to have as much writings as possible, but that's not to take anything away from the excellent essay that's found with this. It is the essay which is called Lost and Not Found in Chinatown by Oliver Wang. This is another great one. Really fantastic. So many levels, so many points that are covered here. Once again, like with all the other essays, it is highly recommended that you first watch the film, Chan is Missing. After you've seen the film, you can read this great essay because it does go into specifics and details about the film itself. And I think there are understandings about having seen the film. And then you can you can read this brilliant essay. Once again, the Oliver Wang essay, Lost and Not Found in Chinatown. Please check it out if you can. So overall, wow, the inclusion of this film in the physical media catalog of the Criterion Collection is another cause for celebration indeed this year. The overall design and package and stylings are brilliant. This is an opportunity to explore this film. Brilliant stuff. So please check it out if you can. It is so worth it. This is the film by Wayne Wang, and that is Chan is Missing. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.